So there's been quite a few firmware updates released by Icom for the Icom IC-9700 radio. So what I thought I'd do in this video is show you exactly how to update the firmware to the latest that Icom recommend. And we'll go through the steps on how to format the SD card right through to actually loading the firmware on. So the first thing that you'll need is an SD card such as this one. Now I've got a micro SD card in here. If we have a look there, it's a little 2 GB SanDisk card, which is more than large enough for the firmware that we're going to load on here. The radio will support up to 32 GB, so you can always get a larger card if you want. And I've just got it plugged into this SD card adapter. Now the IC-9700 doesn't come with an SD card. You do need to provide your own. So yeah, basically the SD card slot is just down here on the bottom left. So the first thing we'll do is with the radio powered off, just plug in the SD card and we'll power on. Now we'll go through formatting the SD card first. Okay, now the first thing that you want to do once you've got the SD card inserted is make sure that you see the little SD card symbol at the top here to make sure that the radio is reading the card properly. Now to format the card, which is the first thing that we do, is hit the menu button and then we go set, SD card, tap on that, and then scroll down to, we'll see format. Now if we click on format, it'll say format OK. Of course this will remove and wipe everything off of the card, so make sure that if you're using an old card that you get some photos or whatever else that you've got stored, and make sure that you do a backup. In this case there's nothing on the card, so we can format and hit OK, and it's done relatively quickly. Now the next thing that we need to do is remove the card and put it into our computer. Now that involves a couple of things. We can either scroll down and click unmount while the radio's turned on, so we can click unmount and then yes, and then what we can do is we can simply remove the SD card. The other option is turn the radio off, remove the SD card, and now that we've got the SD card out, we can load the firmware on. So another thing to mention with the IC-9700 is to just check what version firmware you're running. The firmware will show when you start the radio, but if you've already got the radio on, there is another way to find that. Simply by clicking menu and then going to the set menu again. There's this others option at the bottom. Just click on others and then information and then version. And this will give the versions of all the different firmwares in the radio. So in this case, I think we're running 1.11 firmware. So the latest firmware at the moment, at the time of this video, is 1.20. So we'll go through the process of loading that onto the radio. Okay, now simply insert the SD card into an SD card reader. Some computers have an SD card reader already in them, but in this case I've got a USB SD card reader. So just pop that into the computer and it will pop up with the SD card, and in this case we can see we've got a folder that's labelled IC-9700. If we open that up, there's quite a few different folders there. So we need to go and find the firmware. Now the firmwares that are released for the IC-9700 are on the Icom Japan website, and we can see we've got a list of different radios. If I scroll to the top here, we've got the IC-7800, 7700, etc. But if we scroll down, we've got the IC-9700. I'll put a link in the description to find the downloads section of this firmware. So the latest is version 1.20 that was released on the 11th of October, only a few days ago. So we click on that. It gives a quick rundown of the changes in this version of firmware, and also gives a little bit of some information, specifies in the manual exactly what you can do to update the firmware. So you can see here that the firmware is going to update the main CPU, and the other firmwares related to the radio will, I think, mainly stay unchanged. So we just scroll down to the bottom and click agree. Okay, now that we've downloaded the file, you'll see that it's saved as a zip format. Just by double clicking on that should allow you to get into the zip file and access the data file, which is the actual firmware. Now all we need to do is, we've got the IC-9700 folder down here, which is sitting on the SD card. All we need to do is just drag that straight to the IC-9700 folder. and that will copy across. Now if we open up the 9700 folder, we'll see that that is now sitting underneath all of these other folders. So that's where the firmware needs to be placed for the upgrade. So go ahead and remove the SD card. It's always best to remove it safely down in the bottom right hand corner. Just click on the little USB icon, which is safely remove hardware, and eject the SD card. Once it says it can be removed, remove it from the PC. Okay, with the radio powered off, just simply put the SD card back into the SD card reader in the radio. Turn the radio on, wait for it to boot up. Now that that's fired up, again check to make sure that you can see the SD card icon up the top right hand corner there. Simply by pressing menu now, set, SD card, and we'll just scroll up in the menus. We can see firmware update. Click on firmware update. Just gives you a bit of information regarding the upgrade of the firmware, that if it's risky and if you haven't got the correct firmware. So just scroll down and ask if you agree to all of the above. If you agree, just hit yes, and we can see there's the firmware that we loaded into our SD card. So simply just tap on that. Once again, it gives you another warning saying don't ever remove the SD card, don't power off the radio. Make sure that you leave it plugged in. It'll take about approximately 2 minutes. Now for this second screen, you have to hold and press yes for the firmware to update. Okay, the radio is restarting now. Once again, if you found this video very helpful, please leave a thumbs up and a comment. Let me know if you've had any issues with updating the firmware. So we'll just go menu, set, scroll back down, others, information, version, and we can see now we're running version 1.20 on the firmware. So thanks for watching. That's how you upgrade the firmware on the Icom IC-9700.